Hey everybody, welcome to Getaway Day, the podcast episode 6. I'm Gautam Rao. I'm joined by Mason Lott. Today we're going to fix the Rockies. We're going to build them up from the bottom up, and hopefully you're listening, Mr. Monfort, because we've got some pretty good suggestions, we think. Um, we're going to do a stat of the week, and we're going to finish up with some April awards. But before we get started today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Um, no free ads here, but Mason and I both each bought a shirt from RotoWear.
I actually
Um,
bought three, but only one fits for this. So just fun
yeah, so
fact.
we each bought a mystery baseball shirt from RotoWear, and we're about to open the packages and put the shirts on for this podcast. So
Yeah,
we'll be right back.
yeah. Well, so we'll open them on camera, show them, and then we'll go ahead and go into an intermission for all like a minute for us to change our shirts. But this is kind of fun. This is something that I figured that Porsche Cayman S, while I love this shirt, doesn't exactly scream baseball. So trying to get more baseball into our already pretty baseball pod. And this seemed like a pretty fun way to do it. Let's see, what is this? That is my receipt. Comes in this nice little gold bag. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and show my non-mystery t-shirts first. So I figured, let's do this one first. I'm a big Cardinal fan, obviously, if you haven't been able to tell. So I did have to go ahead and get my Nolan Arenado with the Arch shirt, as any good Cardinal fan would do. Then I also got the face of baseball, my boy El Nino, Fernando Tatis Jr., with the bat flip that, pay no mind to the fact that that bat flip was specifically off of Giovanni Gallegos in the postseason. And then now mystery shirts. You want to do yours first?
Mine says New York City basketball is back.
You got basketball? That's awesome. So I did get baseball. I guessed the wrong large team. I actually got a Yankees shirt. I'm repping my boy Clint Frazier. I put it a little closer to the camera there if you want. But, so yeah. So we're going to go put these on real quick, and we will be back in all of like 15 seconds. All right. We are back. Gowie's wearing
All
his
right.
very out of place basketball shirt.
Yep.
I got my Clint Frazier. Love that dude. He has probably some of the best cleats in the league. Just gonna throw that one out there.
All right, so let's get started today by talking about a milestone that was reached over the weekend. Joey Votto hit his 300th home run on Friday against the Cubs. So I just wanted to just talk about how Joey Votto is like a completely different player than he pretty much was for the bulk of his career. He's doing something that he really hasn't done in like over a decade, which is he's swinging at 47% of pitches, and usually he's like in the high 30s range. So it's basically an aggressive Joey Votto, which is something that I never thought I'd see.
Yeah, and so for some of the more kind of casual fans, basically what he's doing is he said, kind of screw my being the on base guy, the guy that's on base with like a 450 whatever OBP. He's selling out some of his on base to get some more power because fans come to see home runs. Fans don't come to see him taking walks, which he could do that for the next like 4 years and will still finish with a career 400 OBP.
Yeah, and it's not like he's lost his like eye for seeing what strikes are. He's always going to have that. It's just he's kind of realized that for him to keep up in the game and still be a productive player, he kind of needs to be more aggressive and try to hit the ball hard. And it's kind of reflected in his Statcast metrics. He has a max exit velocity that's in the 92nd percentile. So for a 37-year-old man, that's pretty amazing that he can hit the ball like harder than basically anyone in the league.
Except Nelson Cruz, who is 39.
He's like 41.
Is he actually in his 40s?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. All right.
He's a robot. But yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, that's so Joey Votto has always been really fun to watch. I think he's maybe the only Red that I don't have like an open hatred for. Well, and Tucker Barnhart, but he and I are buddies. We both know that. But
Yeah, he's just like a really fun player to watch his career. I'm not sure how well this approach is going to hold up if he's making so much less contact, but definitely going to be keeping an eye on it. And he's still got multiple years with the Reds before he retires or whatever.
yeah.
Another question I'll pose to you. I'm kind of borrowing this idea from another podcast that I listened to called the Pull Hitter Podcast, where the host, his name is Rob DiPietro. He interviews really good fantasy baseball players on their strategies and stuff. And one of the questions he was asking is just like, when you open up a box score, like on the MLB app, I mean, it used to be in newspapers. I used to like read the newspaper when I was in elementary school and look at all the box scores. What's the thing that you're looking out for first when you see a box score?
Like the number that my eye naturally gravitates to first?
Yeah.
So for pitchers, it's always going to be for starting pitchers, it's always going to be innings pitched because that pretty much gives you a pretty good idea how efficient a guy has been for the most part. I mean, obviously you're going to want to look at pitch counts and see kind of what the situations were when he came out of the game and whatever. But for starting pitchers, it's always innings pitched for me. I think for hitters, I naturally look at the hit column. I like people that get on base a lot and have high averages. And so if a guy comes out and he has like a 4-hit game, that dude's locked in. And so that's kind of the guy that I look at because if you got 4 hits, chances are you got some other stuff too.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like I'm looking out for crooked numbers basically in the line score. So on Sunday there were actually some like really eye-catching ones that I noticed. So Chris Taylor, he went 3 for 3 with 5 runs scored. And a walk. And then Castellanos went 5 for 6 actually with 4 runs scored and 4 RBI. And then kind of on the complete opposite spectrum, Daniel Johnson, he's a young player with Cleveland, making his second start of the season. He went 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. So that's the
platinum sombrero?
Platinum sombrero. So
I want one of those.
Not a great way to start the season, but I'm still high on Johnson because I think he's like a really intriguing combination of power and speed, and he really throws the ball well too. So hopefully Cleveland doesn't just give up on him after a bad game, but they've been known to make some questionable decisions in the past.
Boneheaded. You could say it. They're not quite as bad as another organization that we may or may not be talking about today. But yeah. No, that's a good question though. I'm kind of tempted to start looking at just see if any other numbers just at box scores I'm looking at pop out and just kind of actively thinking to myself, well, what am I looking at first?
And the other one that I'm always looking for is stolen bases because they happen so rarely. I always want to see like if there were any steals in the game that I'm specifically looking at.
Well, and at this point, I read the home run list too because it's usually pretty extensive. So I'm looking for multi-homer games with guys that had a bunch of hits.
Yep, exactly.
Speaking of homer, Kevin Pillar. Dang. Didn't know he could hit home runs still.
Wow.
Yeah, to dead center field. It went about 10 feet up the batter's eye. I have 5 feet up the batter's eye. Far enough Bader couldn't somehow get it, so you know.
Okay, let's move on to the stat of the week. This week we're going to do Wrc Plus, which is a offensive statistic that can be used to compare players or teams that play in different ballparks. So basically the way we can use this is to compare like any player to the average performer in the league at that time. So it uses weighted on-base average, which we talked about a few weeks ago, which credits different values to the different ways that you can get on base. So singles, doubles, triples, home runs, hit by pitches, and walks. all have different values, and they're boiled down to this one singular number, which can tell you um, how that player is performing versus the rest of their league. Um, the other nice thing about it is that it's scaled so that 100 is average, and every point above average is that percent above average. So a 150 WRC plus would be a player who's 50% above the league average. And then a number under 100 would be a player that's below average. So a 90 WRC plus is a player that's 10% worse than league average. The thing that WRC plus does is that it scales for ballpark too. So it's a way you can compare a player that plays most of their games in a really hitter friendly environment versus a player that plays in like a really you know not friendly for offense environment. So we're going to talk about it throughout this episode about the challenges that the Rockies have playing in Coors Field, but we all know that Coors Field is a super great park for hitting home runs and scoring lots of runs. So with WRC Plus, we can use it to compare a player that plays most of their games at Coors versus a player that played most of their games at like Marlins Park or whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of my go-to stat whenever I'm just trying to get like a general idea of how good a hitter is. So like for a specific game, I think I was looking yesterday at some guys, and there were some guys that had like 500 WRC pluses for an individual game. But then over a season-long standpoint, like your best hitters of all time, your Barry Bonds 2004, right, is sitting right at about 200, and that's insane. Like a lot of guys are going to be sitting somewhere between like 100 and 140 for the most part. Your really good guys, your Mike Trouts, I think, can sometimes sit up closer to 150, 160.
Yeah, actually Mike Trout. He's never had a season where he's been worse than 62% better than the league average. So 162 is the lowest WRC plus he's ever had.
Good Lord, that dude is nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know how he doesn't have every award. He should have the National League Rookie of the Year every year. And he's neither a rookie nor in the National League. Give it to him anyway. Cy Young, Mike Trout. All for it. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think throughout this episode, we'll probably be referring to WRC Plus a couple more times so you can see it in use. But the main thing we wanted to talk about today is the Colorado Rockies. So last week, of course, their former top decision maker on the baseball side, Jeff Bridich, he resigned after being in that role for 7 years. Today it was announced that Bill Schmidt has been named the acting general manager.
Yeah, and he's their vice president of scouting. So
yeah, so he's got a lot of scouting experience, but from the sounds of it, they'll be interviewing outside the organization following the 2021 season. Obviously, this guy may have a chance to interview for the full-time job, but I guess we'll start with where the Rockies have been throughout their history. And to be honest, it has not been a very nice history, I would say. They've never won their division in now, 28 seasons of existence?
Yeah, 1993 to now. So.
Yes. They've never won their division. Obviously, they play in tough division right now with the Dodgers, but that's not great. They've had 3 different instances of having back-to-back seasons. So, 1995 to 97, they had winning seasons. 2009 and 2010, they had winning seasons, and then 2017 and 2018. So it's only happened 3 times.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as you said, like they've kind of been in a rough situation and being in probably one of the most, I don't want to say the best division, but the division that somehow has the best team in the league, like every year, because in the early 2010s, or like 2000, was it 2008, 10, and 12?
2016, it was the
10 through 16, it was the Giants. And even before that, the Giants were the top in the division. They just weren't making the World Series in 2008, 2009. And then recently, you've had the Dodgers make, 3 out of 4 World Series or 4 out of 5 World Series here in that 2017, 2018.
6 years in a row now. So they're kind of the top. And then obviously now the Padres are right there in contention with the Dodgers.
And the Giants don't appear to be going anywhere anytime soon, as far as
they're only going up.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I'm getting at there, because I think the Giants are currently winning that division, aren't they?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So shocker, did not see that one coming.
Yeah. But the Rockies themselves, obviously playing Coors Field, and that poses its own challenges. Not even from the baseball playing standpoint, but from like a rest and recovery standpoint, it becomes really difficult for the players to, make the travel and then have their bodies recover when they're playing so many games at that high altitude. And then in the most recent years, they've gotten a whole bunch of criticism based on the different moves that they've made with their roster. They seem like they always are kind of shopping in that middle class of free agents. They've had a really bad track record with free agent signings, most recently when they gave $106 million to 3 different relief pitchers, Brian Shaw, Jake McGee, and Wade Davis, for 3 years, paying those guys $106 million, and I'm pretty sure they got negative wins above replacement.
I think Ottavino had some, or he was still ARB at the time, but he was the only plus reliever that they had, right?
Right, but he wasn't even like the big money free agent. He was like their own guy. Yeah. So, and then the other thing that I'll have to mention is just the way the organization. What?
Do I need to get the shirt?
Maybe.
The Nolan Arenado trade, I don't understand. That's one of those, like, the most recent for sure, like, big move that I mean, I understood that they were going to try and offload Nolan, but Nolan is one of the best players in the game. There's no way you should have to pay somebody to take him. So the fact that the Cardinals got $50 million and Nolan Arenado and gave up Alouris Montero, Austin Gomber, and 2 guys that I don't remember who they are, that's just idiotic, quite frankly, of Bridich. And that's kind of the history that the Rockies have had. Now, granted, they've had some really good players too in the past. Like, let's not only tear them down.
For sure, mention, like, we can't just be trashing the Rockies completely without giving them credit for what they have done right. And what that is developing their like first and second round talent. So I have here their first and second round picks, going back to like Todd Helton. Obviously, he was great, but then since then they've had Tulowitzki, Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, Matt Holliday, Charlie Blackmon, John Gray. Like, these are legitimately like all-star type players.
Yeah. Kyle Freeland is one of those guys that had an amazing year. Right now, the jury's kind of still out on if he's going to go back to that or be kind of somewhere in between, but he'd be right up there. It wasn't a draft pick, but another move that I would applaud them for is Larry Walker, because he came from Montreal, and they ended up getting Larry Walker, and he put together a Hall of Fame career for them. Like, so they have had some good decisions in the past, both drafting and I don't know if he was a trade or a free agent. I assume a trade coming out of Montreal. I'm not sure. Dante Bichette, I'm not sure where he came from either, but he was also a really good player for them. So
so they've had their fair share of like good players and even star players, but the thing that like really irks me about it is the way they've treated their star players. Like with Arenado getting like basically turning his back on the franchise after 1 year into his like mega deal, where he's requesting a trade, and then something kind of similar, maybe not to the same extent, happened with Troy Tulowitzki when they traded him in 2015. he was expecting that he would be kept in the loop on where he would be headed, and Jeff Bridich didn't even tell him where he'd be going. He just one day found out, oh, I'm going to Toronto, and I didn't have any say in this decision, which is not a great way to treat your star players.
Yeah.
And yeah, Bridich does really not have a good track record with like his public perception, and he's kind of like a guy that is known as a poor communicator and really like closed off, but then at the same time he's a guy that seems like he thinks that he's the smartest guy in the room and doesn't really rely on any of the rest of his staff or team or whatever.
Yeah. Now, some of the blame here does also lie with the owner.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he kept this guy around for 7 years with this guy kind of... And, I mean, after the Tulo deal, you could say, I mean, yeah, the player doesn't really get a say because it's a business, sure. But you start seeing a pattern emerge. Right now, Trevor Story is kind of going through the same thing, or he was starting to. Is Arenado. Granted, he didn't sign a mega deal. It's just, are they going to extend him? Are they not? What's going to happen? Are they going to trade him? And there's just really no inclination that the Rockies are going to do or say anything internally or externally about what their plans are. Granted, they could be changing depending on the season, how the season goes. But at some point, the leadership of that team, be it the GM, the owner, even the assistant GM, needs to kind of go in there and try and lead that team from a front office standpoint. And it kind of seems like there's been a man behind the curtain in Colorado.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. The one that always sticks out to me is the decision of Jeff Bridich to sign Ian Desmond. So he had asked his entire analytics group, which is quite small compared to other teams' departments, to rank the first basemen that were available that year in free agency. There were guys like Mitch Moreland, Mike Napoli, Trevor Plouffe, Chris Carter, Mark Trumbo. So some solid options. And they actually ranked Ian Desmond last on that list because he had never played first base and they weren't sure if he was really that great of a hitter. So he asked for that input and he got, a legitimate like analysis and reasoning for why they would want to like highlight or like go after these players, and then he just completely goes against what information he has and signs Ian Desmond to a contract bigger than all those players that I just listed combined. So it's just like I don't understand that kind of mentality, and that's part of the reason why they've been so bad.
Yeah, but we say they've been bad, and I mean that's all kind of based on eye test, but the numbers back it up. I mean, you were kind of alluding to earlier, just kind of historically, they're an underperforming team at just some of the kind of face value stats. WRC Plus, I think their team WRC Plus has never been above 100. Is that correct?
Yeah, that one really shocked me. So they put up tons of runs and everything when they play at Coors Field, but when you adjust for the park, like WRC Plus does, the highest WRC Plus they've ever had in a single season was 97. So just about league average or just a little bit below.
Yeah,
which is
and
shocking to me.
And I mean, you could. I haven't looked at the home road splits for the team as a whole, but I'm sure that you could see that by looking at the away splits there.
Yeah.
Granted, it sounds like I'm trying to build into the whole Coors Field effect for players, which is sometimes true, sometimes not. There are cases like what Nolan Arenado is trying to show right now, what Larry Walker did show, what DJ LeMahieu did show, where that's not going to be the case with every player. Some players are just good in general. And those are the guys that are putting up monster numbers in Coors that they then go put up monster numbers elsewhere too. But the team as a whole, you could look at their splits and see that they do way better at home in probably one of the most hitter-friendly parks there is, right?
Yeah.
What?
Hands down, it's not even close. Coors Field is the most hitter-friendly place you can play.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the Baseball Savant, for anyone that likes looking at analytics. They put up their park factors last week, I think. So it breaks down a whole bunch of different park factors based on I think park factors for individual types of pitches, for lefty hitters, righty hitters, basically everything you can think of. How parks play for strikeouts versus how they play for home runs. It's really detailed and really cool. It's all based on StatCast, which, just side note, when did StatCast go from AWS to Google whatever services? Was that this year?
I think it was this year or last year, yeah.
All right, because I caught that on a broadcast, and that kind of threw me off a little bit. I was a bit surprised. I didn't realize they were changing that.
Yeah, I think that's a relatively new change.
I mean, that's off topic, so sorry. But
no problem. Yeah, and if you allow me to nerd out here for just a quick second.
Unacceptable. We do not allow that here.
I'm going to do it anyways.
Fine, my hands are tied.
So there's what you were talking about there with the players playing at Coors, and then, having to go on the road, obviously completely different environmental circumstances. And there's a really interesting statistic or metric called VMI, which stands for Visual Memory Index. So basically what it tries to do is it measures like the degree of a pitch's movement that a hitter may be accustomed to. So if they've been playing 4 games at Wrigley Field and then they go to Coors Field, they'll have kind of a expect how pitches are going to be breaking. And then when they go to Coors Field, it'll move completely different, and they're not going to be prepared for that without some sort of adjustment period. So one of the things that I was thinking, and probably the Rockies already do this, we would hope that they do it, but when a team comes to town to play them, they should be game planning based on things like VMI that allow them to have that advantage, at least in the early part of series. They need to be leveraging their ballpark for their own use, and they're the ones that play in it the most. They should be winning most of their games that they play there.
Yeah, what's their, even just like the last full season, so 2019, what was their home record? Do you know?
I can check on that.
Yeah, from my iPad, I can't change the year on the standings, so...
Yeah, and then kind of tied to that same point is they need to like tap into a way to recover and rest their players in a way that like benefits them the most. They didn't seem like they had any real training plan, and the fact that Charlie Blackmon had to come up with the organizational plan because they didn't have any. They need to know how to play in their own park, which seems pretty obvious, but I don't know if they're actually doing it.
Yeah, and that kind of just points more, because that's not inherently a GM's... Yeah. Well, it's not inherently a GM's job, but at the same time, he tells other people what to do to make sure that they're ready for that. So that's another failure that goes all the way up to Bridich and to potentially even it's Paul Manfort, right?
It's Monfort. It's
Monfort. Dick Monfort? Yeah. I don't know where I came up with that name. Oh, well. Yeah, Dick Monfort could potentially just be saying, I don't want to pay to develop a training and recovery program that other teams aren't using.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't make sense, though, because that's another thing that we can't really fault the Rockies for. They're like 21st in market size, but they have the 11th highest payroll. So we can't really say that they're not willing to spend.
Well, we can say that they're willing to spend on players, but we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. So they very well could say, well, we're getting you good players, which we're paying our players a lot of money. I guess it's really we'll get into that in a minute. We're paying our players a lot of money, so our players should be able to do this themselves because we're paying them to do this themselves. It could be the mentality there because I don't know. With them being a smaller market, they don't have more money than other small market teams, probably. I mean, they're not the Cardinals. They don't have like the 5th largest fan base with the 15th largest market. They actually are on the small end. So, yeah. But, let's see. Did you end up ever finding that home run?
No, I didn't find.
No? All right. But anyway, no, it was just something that I was curious about because, yeah, they 100% should be winning like the first game of every series.
Yeah, and I don't know what that even necessarily like looks like. Maybe that's throwing 95% breaking balls, or maybe that's 95% fastball, something. But they should be able to figure that out and
yeah,
do it.
And I would be curious if there were a way to do it, which I think Matthew had sent us information about a database that has a whole bunch of info that we could look at and pull. I wonder how in-depth it would be on basically Rockies pitch selection in 2018 by game and stuff like that. Because I would be curious, like in that season where Kyle Freeland was just an absolute monster, and that rotation was one of the better rotations in the league, quite frankly. Even playing in Coors.
Something out that year, they had an above-average pitching staff, and they really leaned into the run prevention side of it too. So having like Arenado and Story on the left side of the infield, and I think that's also like a really important thing in Coors, that you have a good defense.
Yeah, especially in that outfield because the left center, that outfield is just massive.
Yeah, that's so, like the underrated part about Coors. Everyone knows about the home runs, but that place is the best place to hit triples and doubles too. So
yeah,
I think you need, if like one of the things the Rockies need to prioritize is outfield defense and having like a truly elite center fielder that can go track down balls wherever they're hit.
Okay, so the Rockies were 43-39 at home in 2019, and they were 38 and what would that be? 38-43 on the road.
Like that,
yeah. So
yeah, but
they were better at home than on the road, but only minorly.
Yeah. Right.
But because basically that. So they were 81-81. They finished 500 in 2019, if I'm reading that right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but they should be way better than that. They have every bit of information to put together a team and be.
2019, 71 and 91.
All right, I'm off by 10 here. Not sure where I'm off by 10. Yeah, well, so yeah, unless they only won 28 games on the road, which I mean could be. That would be a perfect example of them being good at home compared to on the road. So that would be. But no, yeah, they in that team. Yeah, 71 and 91. Okay. But yeah, this team should be, with that ballpark, that team should be hitting well. Basically, it's the best place to hit in Major League Baseball. They've had guys like Arenado, like Charlie Blackmon, like Trevor Story, these guys that can go out here and just absolutely rake. Story and Arenado rake anywhere they play. Charlie Blackmon, depending on the season, can rake anywhere. Other seasons he can only rake at Coors. I need to do a bit more of a deep dive into Charlie Blackmon before I say he's just like a great player everywhere. He's good, but I don't know if I definitely wouldn't put him on Story or Arenado levels. But with those three players all on the same team, you should be able to put together a supporting cast that's good enough to go out there and put up lopsided numbers in your home ballpark that would then also be able to translate to other ballparks and maybe not win as many games, maybe not hit as many home runs, as many triples, whatever. But they should be able to put together one roster of above 100 WRC plus. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think they're brought, like, they score plenty of runs obviously because of Coors, but they're just brought down because that park factor is so extreme.
High. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. They should be able to put together a supporting cast to support their stars, and I think that's another one of their big failures, in the fact that their prospects, honestly, like, are they've had some like big name prospects that really just sort of stall out when they get to the major leagues.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that kind of brings up a good topic: is who even is on that team right now?
Yeah,
because without me telling you, because I've got the entire 40 man right here and their entire top, well, not their entire, I stopped doing the top 30 prospects pretty early on. I've got the top 5 prospects there, and then a couple sprinkled in the 40 man roster. But go ahead and name me their top 5 best players. I'll just make you do 5.
So they got CJ Cron on a 1-year deal. They got Ryan McMahon playing second base. He's been pretty solid. Obviously, Trevor Story. They've got Raimel Tapia doing his thing. They got Josh Fuentes, cousin of Nolan Arenado. Not quite the same player. Not even close.
So you got 5, and you didn't even give me Chuck Nasty.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, yeah. So, I guess people know their roster at least. And the only guy that you named that hasn't been there for a couple years now is CJ Cron. But their catchers, Elias Diaz, Dom Nunez. Infielders, they just brought Matt Adams up from the minors this week. He played in his first 2 games last week. So Matt Adams, CJ Cron, Jonathan Daza, Garrett Hampson, Sam Hilliard, Raimel Tapia. Why does this go sideways like that? So I was reading pages down. Apparently it goes over and then comes back. So I just mixed up my infielders and outfielders. Let me do that again. Infielders: Matt Adams, CJ Cron, Josh Fuentes, Ryan McMahon, Chris Owings, Brendan Rodgers, Trevor Story, Alan Trejo, and let's see, Colton Welker and Aluris Montero are still in the minors. They're number 9. Montero is their number 9 prospect, and Welker is their 11. So, yeah, so that's their infield. Their outfield.
Yeah, go ahead.
Their outfield: Charlie Blackmon, Jonathan Daza, Garrett Hampson, Sam Hilliard, Raimel Tapia, and then Brett Boswell is in the minors. And then their pitchers, I'll just name you the guys who I've heard of. I'll skip some of the other guys. Daniel Bard, Ryan Castellani, or however he pronounces his. Ulysse Chassin, Carlos Estevez, Kyle Freeland, Lucas Gilbreth, who just debuted on Saturday. So I'm trying to remember what number. Cespedes Family Barbecue is doing a countdown to the 20,000th MLB player, and I think he clocked in at 19,970, I think. Lucas Gilbreth did. They got Michael Givens, Austin Gomber, Chichi Gonzalez, John Gray, and Peter Lambert had Tommy John, and Scott Oberg had Tommy John, Herman Marquez, and Antonio Sensatella. And then a whole bunch of guys I've never heard of before. And Robert Stevenson from the Reds. So.
Yeah, so overall, roster does not look great right now, and you can't even really look at it and say, hey, there's some guys here that could be good like in a couple years. There's really no hope for the entire active roster other than Trevor Story, and he won't be a Rocky very long.
Well, and so I looked at this, and it's like, well, crap, I don't know anything about half these guys. So I tried to figure out, like, what's the best way for me to figure out how good this roster is right now. And so I went on Fangraphs, and I pulled up the WAR by team and was given the following numbers. So Rockies batters have 2.8 total WAR, which is the second worst in the major leagues other than Texas, who has 0.1. So Texas is replacement level hitters, period. The Rockies are next. And then their pitchers have 10.5 WAR, which sounds way better, but they're still the fourth worst in the league. Their team totals is 13.3, which puts them second worst after Texas's 10.1. So, and for reference, their star player from the past couple of years, who they traded to the Cardinals, Nolan Arenado, already has 0.7 WAR himself, and he just hit a monster 3-run home run. So 0.8, 0.9, somewhere in there now. But yeah, so like there's individual players that are playing almost as good as the entire Rockies team statistically.
Yeah,
so I think Mike Trout has 2 WAR.
Byron Buxton's, I believe, at 2.3 WAR.
Yeah, so Byron Buxton,
2.1.
Byron Buxton is the Colorado Rockies offense, period.
Yeah, and Byron Buxton is one player. It's important to note.
Yeah. So, it's not good. Like, I was trying to find players that have been maybe diamonds in the rough even. Dom Nunez, their catcher, is who isn't even their starting catcher, I don't think. I think Dom's their backup.
Yeah, he's been getting a lot more playing time because he keeps popping home runs.
Well, that and Elias Diaz is historically terrible. Like, I looked back at his entire career, and he's not. WAR-wise, I think it was maybe 2 seasons with positive WAR and 3 seasons with negative WAR. And even then, defensively, he's always been negative. So you would think that would be a red flag that you wouldn't pay him $1.2 million and make him your starter if you have Dom Nunez, who's sitting here with a WOBA of 349 and an ex-WOBA of 310. Like, he's actually playing relatively how he's expected to be. He's popped 4 home runs, and he's not a terrible defender. If I remember right, Dom's pretty solid. But
yeah, but I would say that I don't think it's too crazy to say that there's probably no one on this entire roster that will be playing in the next Rockies playoff game.
Correct. So
what do we have to look forward to? Because I know you took a dive into their prospects.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, I kind of want to give a little bit of love to their couple players that actually have been performing well. Ryan Mcmahon, 120 Wrc Plus so far this season. Through May 1st is when I've got my stats for. So I think he had a decent game yesterday as well, so it could have come up. I don't know. But he's got 0.8 WAR, and this is his career low in strikeout rate so far. So he's doing really well. Chris Owings, I think, is hurt right now, but he was doing really well. He's
for a week.
Yeah, for a week he was doing awesome. Trevor Story is starting a little bit slow. He's on base a solid amount, but he's only hitting 266 with 2 home runs. But I mean, all the star shortstops seem to be starting slow this year too. But still 0.4 WAR. And honestly, at $18.5 million for this year, his last year of arbitration, he's kind of a steal. And then in the outfield, I thought we had one guy that was doing really well. Garrett Hampson. I've been watching for years, hoping that he finally figured something out, and he appears to have so far. Through 99 plate appearances as of the first, 0.4 WAR, 292 average, only an 88 WRC plus, but he has really high defensive value and 5 steals. So like he's basically another Harrison Bader type that's hitting with a higher average right now.
Yeah, he's not he's fine, but he doesn't hit a lot of home runs. But I think that's okay for kind of what they need. Like, he's a guy that can, I guess, seems like he can play center field and
he can cover that entire center field. Him and Raimel Tapia which Rymel has a 0.0 WAR, and I don't understand that because he's also playing really well with a 280 average, 3 home runs, 326 WOBA, 296 x WOBA. So not bad. Surprised he's not gotten higher WAR than that. So he's probably got something else that I'm missing in my very quick research here. And then they had one pitcher. I think it was, or two pitchers. I think John Gray and Herman Marquez were both playing really well so far. But yeah, so those are the guys on their big league roster right now that are good, which I think I only named 7, maybe 6. And really, when I say good, I'm not saying best in the league. I'm saying I would keep him around as Trevor Story is best in the league. The rest of them are, I would definitely add them to my team to make them better, but they're not in and of themselves going to make a great team. Prospects, there's not much. I mean, quite frankly, Zach Veen is probably the guy. He is an outfielder, high school prospect, 19 years old, just got drafted in 2020 is their first round pick. I don't have his entire prospect grade here, but I do know his lowest grade was a 50, which was running. He's a very, very good prospect coming out of high school. But coming out of high school, he's a long ways off. He's probably not going to even, they're not going to think about letting him see the majors until probably 2024, if not 2025, depending on how everything else goes. Ryan Rolison is probably their best pitcher.
Rolison's definitely the guy that could probably see the major leagues this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's got I think he has a 60 graded curveball or a 65 graded curveball. His curveball is awesome. Yep. He's got a plus fastball. His slider comes in at league average, but I mean, if you have an amazing curveball and a plus fastball, if you have just an average slider, you're probably going to play pretty well. So if that translates up, he's in good shape. Plus, he pitched at Ole Miss for 3 years, so he's got some higher intensity playing there in the SEC. So I wouldn't be surprised if he pitched pretty well right after coming up. But he'll probably come up here later in the year if there's an injury. And then 2 other just honorable mentions. I won't give very much about him, but Michael Toglia and Ryan Vilade, Vilade. It's I believe Toglia is a first baseman and Vilade is a center fielder. Solid fielder. He's actually a power bat with solid fielding. So I think his contact skill came in kind of 45 grade maybe, but he can take left field and lock that down and just mash home runs for him. So yeah, so that's really all that they've got in their system, and everyone else is coming in at minus or negative WAR or 0. They've got a couple guys that I think are going to be ready for prospects this year that I didn't mention, which are Aluris Montero, possibly Colton Welker for position players, and then they've been bringing up a whole bunch of pitchers already. I think Antonio Santos debuted last year and got rocked in his 3 appearances. Hector Olivares hasn't debuted yet, but he's probably their next best pitching prospect. He's their number 7. I think he'll be up this year. Helcris, I think. Did I say that right the first time?
I think it's Helcris, yeah.
Yeah. And then Justin Lawrence.
He actually just made his debut, and he throws 100 miles per hour from this weird sidearm slot.
Oh, that's that guy?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. No, that's kind of really...
He's pretty interesting, and it's just funny that he has absolutely no hype because every team seems to now have a guy that throws 100 miles per hour now.
Well, and he's their number 30 prospect, and his command is awful.
That's why he's a reliever.
But I'm not sure it's even considered effectively wild.
Yeah, probably not. That happens a lot with relievers that throw that hard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, and I mean, Jordan Hicks throws that hard, but he throws over the top still.
He still doesn't have good command, but
no,
it's obviously better
no,
than this.
but his is effective.
Yeah.
With Lawrence, because he comes from that weird side slot, because he is not really a submariner, but it's like a really, I don't even know how you describe it.
3/4.
Is it? It looks more than that. It's like 4/5. It's the 4/5 spot. It's way down there.
You just invented a new arm slot.
I know,
name.
right? Dude, someone like Fangraph, sign me to an extension. Or just an original contract.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'll ask is, what should the assistant general manager do with Trevor Story, considering the state of the farm system? Do you try to sign him to a contract after the season, and then just come away with the qualifying offer, or do you need to trade him away because the system's so barren?
So, any Rockies fans that end up listening to this episode are going to hate me for saying this. But from my just kind of face value analysis of the system, I kind of think they got to blow it all up. Not just even Story. I think you get back value for the pieces you've got that could help a contending team. There's a team that needs a second baseman, third baseman that would love to have Ryan McMahon. He's got really good power from the left side of the dish, and he's a pretty solid defender at third. You could get some prospects for him that are better than your top 30, and I mean, hell, 10 of their top 30 are all going to debut this year, and they're all pitchers, and they're all like numbers like 17 through 30. At some point, you got to start stocking with some higher end prospects. You got to do basically what the Padres did, or what the Marlins are trying to do.
Same thing with a guy like German Marquez.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams would like to have him as part of their starting rotation to see what he can do away from Coors.
So you want to know what the note I had for German Marquez is? 0.5 WAR, under contract until 2023 with the 2024 club option at 8.4 AAV. Career 4.24. I think that was supposed to say ERA, but I put WAR. Career 4.24 ERA. Good stuff. I like him. That was my notes on German Marquez.
He's a really good pitcher, and he eats innings, which is becoming a rarity these days. I think and plus, like you said, he's got multiple years left on his contract, so that becomes a really valuable chip if they decide they want to trade him this year. And they can even trade him like in the offseason or next year too. Yeah,
but then guys that I honestly would trade this year, because you're going to lose them if you don't trade them now, and you need to get something back for him. Trevor Story, quite frankly, should have been traded in the offseason. Is a 1-year rental for a team that was shooting for the World Series that needed a star shortstop. He wasn't, so his value is probably going to be a little bit less, especially after this kind of slow start that he's had. And at $18 million, they'll end up, well, they've already paid some of his contract, so it becomes less of an issue for other teams. And you could still get a good prospect back for him, or you could get quantity still. I think you could get 2 or 3 low-level prospects, or like a decent upper level, or at least highly touted lower-level prospect, and another like PTBNL or something. A smarter GM than me could figure out a good trade for him, but you could get value out of that. John Gray, I think, is a free agent after this year. He's really good, and he only makes $6 million in his 3rd year of arbitration. Like, any team would die to have him for the rest of the year. Like, he's really good and can help a lot of rotations. I mean, quite frankly, the Cardinals need him, and I say that knowing full well that our rotation this last week has had like a 2 ERA. It's been really good this week.
Pretty much every single team in the major leagues can use depth starters. Just look at the Dodgers.
Yeah.
we thought they had the best depth, and now they're down 3 starters basically. So
Yeah, so now they're down to just a normal 5-man rotation.
yeah, they only have 4 from the original starting rotation right now. So every team needs starting pitchers, and I think the Rockies should be the one supplying it.
Yeah, and Kyle Freeland is a guy that I couldn't decide how I felt they should deal with him. I kind of think you keep him one more year. He's on the IL right now.
Yeah.
Do you have?
Yeah, he's been pretty up and down. So I think they can still try to see if they can, have him help the team.
I'm gonna sneeze here in a minute, so
Still got
I apologize for that.
Multiple years.
Yeah, but so he pitched pretty decently in 2017, amazingly in 2018, horrifically bad and got optioned in 2019, and then in 2020 he played similar to how he did in 2017 over a shorter season. So he's kind of all over the place. So if he can pitch even just another full season at his 2017 and 2020 levels, he's like a number 4 or 5 reliever, or not reliever, number 4 or 5 rotation piece. But I'd keep him for another year. Carlos Estevez is under team control through 23. What else I got here? Had one other guy that I thought, or maybe, let's see, so Story and McMahon. Yeah, so those 4 guys, I would basically trade away, get as much value as you possibly can out of them. I think there's a couple of guys who aren't on the top 30 yet that I think could end up being pretty good. A couple of guys I didn't mention, Grant Levine. He could pan out pretty well. He was maybe a comp first round pick last year, or maybe a second round pick or something like that. But he, I think he could be decent. Another couple guys like that they might have something, but it's going to be 3-4 years out. And that's kind of the window for the Dodgers and the Padres right now too, is another 2, 3, potentially 4 years for the Padres. They're still going to be good.
Yeah.
So it's like,
one more comment I'll just make on their mentality towards using their prospects that is really frustrating for me to watch is they'll call up a prospect. So like, for example, Brendan Rodgers, who is like a really big prospect. Obviously he's had a lot of injuries and things like that, but it seems like when they called him up, it wasn't to play every day, which just seems silly with a guy of his pedigree.
Yeah, they put him on the bench, didn't they?
Then they put him on the bench, play him once a week, and then he struggles. What can they expect?
Well, and at the same time, they just brought up Garrett Hampson like the year before, and he
never really got full-time playing time at all.
Yeah. And then they did the same thing with Sam Hilliard.
Same thing's happening right now with Sam Hilliard, and he already got option. He's back today, actually, but these players aren't getting their fair shake at, proving themselves in the major leagues, which is it's just a really not smart way to run the team.
Yeah, usually you complain because a team gives a guy too much leash and tries to use a guy too much when there's nothing there. And I mean, there's Cardinal fans are kind of ticked right now at Justin Williams. I don't really understand that very much. He's still pretty good. He's not like top prospect outfielder, but like they're mad that he's playing too much when he's the healthy guy. Yeah, but then you've got the Rockies that at the time have all these guys healthy, and they just won't pick one to give them a fair shake. And so they're basically stunning the growth of prospects and wasting their own guys. It's like, if you're not going to use him, you should get value from him somehow. Whether that's trade him, keep him, I don't know. I don't know. The team needs to... They need to go on a backpacking trip across Europe and find themselves, I think, is kind of the best way to describe
it. If I can
just
summarize, you feel free to jump in if I've forgotten anything, but the first thing they need to do is get their organization like all on the same page and feeling like they're working together rather than, you know, having to listen to Jeff Bridich and not be able to have any input in the situation.
Yeah, and that starts at Dick Monfort and Bill Schmidt just sitting in a room together and saying, this is what we're going to do. We want to win. Do we want to win now, which is going to be impossible, or do we want to win in 5 years? Knowing that Bill Schmidt is interim.
Where they are, they're not good right now. They need to recognize that and make the right moves.
Yeah, and Bill Schmidt is interim, so it's not going to be his problem long term, but he's been there long enough that I think he cares about that club, and they have a limited amount of time to make some moves to put themselves in a good position 4 years down the road with Story and with John Gray. They're basically ticking time bombs on their value. So, sorry, you go back to your summarization.
No problem. Next thing is just leveraging their ballpark, which is the most unique in the majors for their advantage, needs to be a priority in the way that they build their roster as well as the way they develop the players to be able to play in that environment and then also go on the road to have success.
If they put as much time and effort and thought into building a roster as they did building that gorgeous stadium, they could be a dynasty. Just saying. They are capable of putting a lot of time and effort into something and making a gym out of it. Now do it with your on-field product and not where your on-field product plays.
And then, I guess, play your prospects and don't sign free agent relievers to mega deals.
Ori and Desmond.
And then you're well on your way to making some rapid improvements to the franchise as a whole.
Yeah, and obviously we've kind of just basically skipped over the what do they do in the meantime part. In the meantime, you sign guys like Ian Desmond to the contracts they're worth, not to these mega deals that, quite frankly, they probably shouldn't have got. I think that's when Trevor Plouffe, that same season is when Trevor Plouffe went from the Twins to the Phillies. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it could have been, but it definitely wasn't. He didn't get any
He got like a 1 or 2 year deal at maybe 10 mil each. I don't know. It wasn't anything ridiculous, but no, like those are the types of guys that you want to have around if you can get them to come and play during a rebuild. That's going to be the hard part, is finding guys who want to play for you during a rebuild so you keep fans coming back. Because you obviously don't want to completely blow it up and say, we don't want fans to come to the stadium for 3 years and then expect them to come back, because they won't. The St. Louis Rams did that. Now they're in LA. Because St. Louis wouldn't pay for a stadium for them. So, But yeah, I don't know. There's the Rockies are in a... That pun's too easy. The Rockies are in a bit of a precarious situation right now. They could go...
It's a really big opportunity for whoever ends up getting the full-time GM job. I kind of hope it's someone out of the organization so they get a different voice there.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like it's gotten stale, especially in the last few years, and they're not really making a lot of progress.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I'm tired of this kind of negative talk about the Rockies. What do you say we give away some awards?
Let's do it. Let's give some hardware away.
So, we came up with some very official April awards. I think award season is probably everybody's favorite part of the season, except for, the whole season and postseason and preseason and off-season parts. Does that sound about right to you? Yep. So basically, other than all of it, award season is the best. Always love a red carpet. So we thought, what are the kind of most important things to laud players for? And we came up with the list you see on the screen. Mr. Steal Your Base. the 50 cal man, my valuable player. It was going to be Mason's valuable player, but I mean, unless Gotham changes his name, that doesn't work out too well. And then the monthly Mike Trout award, which that's where my joke was. I was going to give it to Mike Trout. No, basically the monthly Mike Trout award is an award that we have come up with that is basically saying Mike Trout is the greatest player that we're ever going to see, ever, probably. And he deserves every award. But he doesn't get it. So if we recognize that Mike Trout should get every award, why not do that by just naming the award after him? So he always gets it, but he never gets it unless he earns it by being Mike Trout. So basically what that is the guy who plays the most like Mike Trout for the month. And so I guess I'll go back to the top of the list now, but after I've explained my joke there. That's how you know it's a good joke when you explain it, right? Yeah, so I'm obviously not going to quit my day job and become a comedian. So Mr. Steal Base is a category that we've come up with that is basically recognizing a player for his on-the-base paths accomplishments and abilities. And my pick for Mr. Steal Base was Zach McKinstry. And the reason I chose McKinstry is that he, as we talked about a couple weeks ago and then again last week in the trivia, he's the first player since Duke Snider to hit his first home run as an inside-the-park home run, which requires you to just absolutely be hammering on the base paths and just going full speed. And so that's why he gets Mr. Steal Base, because he stole home. So I'll let you break down your pick here, Gowie.
Yeah, my pick is favorite of the podcast, clearly Ramon Lauriano. He leads the league in stolen bases. And I think there's something to be said for a guy that is taking bases when like base stealing in general is down. So it seems like an advantage could be gained just by, making those attempts. And he's not the fastest guy. Like I think his sprint speed's in the like 27.7 range, which is really not like at the top of the list for like center fielders or anything, but he's apparently good at getting jumps and he's good at being successful at stealing, and give him props for that.
Yeah, and I mean there's countless other awards that we could come up with that wouldn't be with Lauriano in mind, but he would also qualify for. Yeah, so our next category is the 50 cal man. And this is basically a guy who's just throwing absolute bullets. And we've obviously taken a couple different paths here with our choices. My pick was Dylan Carlson. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. Last week, he had an outfield assist that I'm trying to think. Did he throw it to home or throw it to third?
Threw it to third.
Yeah, so he threw it to third to get the runner, and he threw from deep center field a 92.7 mile an hour bullet to the bag to get the runner out. So that's why Dylan Carlson is this month's 50 cal man in my eyes.
Yeah, underrated part of that play was Arenado like kind of moving up in front of the base to catch the ball to make that tag. That was a great overall play.
Yeah.
My guy's Emmanuel Clase. He's the closer for the Cleveland Indians. He's thrown the most pitches greater than 101 miles per hour this season, even more than Jordan Hicks. He doesn't have the fastest pitch this season, but he's doing it with consistency, and when he throws the ball, it's like completely effortless, and then it's somehow 101 miles per hour, and it's got cut. So it's, nice card there.
The team's a little different on this one, but
yeah, he's got that mentality of a closer too. He doesn't seem fazed by the moment at all, and I think he's going to be a really good piece for that back end of their bullpen.
Yeah, and we would have got to see him last year, except he was on an 80-game PED suspension.
Yeah, that caused him to miss the entire shortened season last year, but he's back now, and they've got to be happy about that trade that they made, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because it was what, Kluber for Class A?
Yeah.
Yeah. The one-inning wonder. He's doing pretty good right now, though, too.
He had a really nice start yesterday.
For the Yankees.
Yeah. All right, I'll take my valuable player first here.
All right.
So my guy's Chris Bryant.
Bias.
Who has actually won the most valuable player once before in 2016, and his numbers so far here in 2021 are actually better through May 1st than they were back in 2016, which is pretty hard to believe because a lot of Cubs fans were writing this guy off like, oh, he gets injured all the time, but I've been saying it for years. A healthy Chris Bryant is a productive Chris Bryant. And we're seeing that again. And the Cubs, honestly, like, I'm a Cubs fan, obviously, but I'm a realistic Cubs fan. They're in last place, and without Chris Bryant playing the way he is, it'd probably look a lot worse.
I do think as a guy that would love to see the Cubs go back to, sucking for eternity again, I kind of think they would be dumb to not make him the cornerstone. I know that Cubs fans love Javi and love Willie, but honestly, I kind of think KB is the guy. If it were me,
from a baseball player perspective, like, he is obviously the best player on the Cubs.
Yeah, and I mean, I've kind of thought that for a while, and I'm right there with you. I think we've had countless conversations about how a healthy KB is a good KB, and he's proved that. He's played through injuries and been terrible, but then as soon as he's healthy again, he mashes. Dude's nuts. Yep. Every time he gets injured, I think the Cubs should pay for him to go to Hawaii.
That's not a bad idea.
It's not. It would allow him to heal and come back and be relaxed and be good. And I like good baseball as much as the next guy. I love watching Chris Bryant mash as long as the Cubs still suck.
Oh, you're getting your wish this year for sure.
I know, it's great. Was that your Christmas present to me?
Sure.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. So yeah, my valuable player is a little bit of an oddball pick. Cedric Mullins was, I don't know if he was the top prospect for the Orioles a couple of years ago, but he was their rookie that was kind of like this is our guy for the next couple years while we know we're going to suck, but he could be pretty good. And then Mullins just kind of didn't live up to the small amount of hype that they gave him, or maybe they overhyped him because they were going to be so bad. I'm not sure which one it was, but he was pretty terrible. But something's happening to Cedric Mullins II. And I don't know what it is, but dude is raking right now. So he's 20. Oh, no, that's games played. I thought that was his age. He's played 28 games, 121 plate appearances, 4 home runs, 321 batting average. He is striking out a little less than 20%, which is actually... Wait, I guess I should click on just him instead of trying to compare him to all the guys above him on the WAR list. Oops. Pardon my terrible statistics reading. Yeah, so Mullins came up in 19. He only played 22 games in 19, was not very good. He hit .094. 2020 hit .271 with 3 bombs in in 48 games, and then this year in 28 games already, he's hitting .321 with 4 bombs, 9 ribbies, 9 runs, 2 stolen bases, a 1.3 WAR. So he's finally starting to figure something out and look a lot more comfortable behind at the dish. There we go. And I mean, I think he's kind of part of the reason that the Orioles are overperforming expectations here in the early running.
Yeah, for me, Mullins, the biggest thing for me is that he gave up switch hitting. So his left-right splits were really extreme, leaning towards his left-handed side. He was really bad as a right-handed hitter, so he just gave that up. And I feel like that could help a young player a lot, just having like half the things to think about, basically.
Yeah, and the other part of it is almost a little bit more mental as well, because switch hitters are never the same from both sides of the plate. I mean, even the best switch hitters have a power side, and they have a side that they can get some pretty decent contact, but they don't really have power because they're not hitting from that side enough. And so whenever you're not hitting as well from the other side, it could bring down your hitting from your main good side. So
yeah, Tucker Barnhart did the same thing, and he's having a really nice season too, just batting as a left-handed hitter.
Yeah. I would like to make one clarification to a statement that I said. I said the Orioles were overperforming expectations, and they are. They're still last place at 13-15. I thought they were going to be like on pace for 100 losses again, which they still could be. We don't know. It's a long season.
Harvey, man, anchoring the staff. He's doing a nice job.
Matt Harvey?
Yeah.
I honestly haven't seen anything about Harvey yet this year.
He's doing well.
All right, so our final award, and ignore the Mike Trout. I'll just take it off because it's a joke that I've missed already. We've got one combined monthly Mike Trout, and this month's Mike Trout is none other than Byron Buxton, guy that we would like to be a friend of the pod. I think we've talked about him almost as much as we've talked about Ramon Lauriano. The dude is a 5-tool player when he's healthy. He's kind of KB from the standpoint of when he's healthy, he's great. Byron Buxton is just on an absolute tear. And I don't know, did you have any statistics or anything you wanted to share? If not, I could pull up his line and just give a...
I mean, Mike Trout kind of does fit on the list here because Mike Trout pretty much just finished his best month of his entire career. And the fact that Buxton outperformed him is just kind of remarkable.
Yeah, and that was the other reason I had Mike Trout up here, is because I originally wanted to give this award to Mike Trout just in general. Like, every month I wanted it to be Mike Trout gets the Mike Trout award, because, yes. But yeah, then you pointed out to me that Buxton actually performed better than Trout, and it's like, oh, yeah. But yeah, so Buxton is hitting 408, which is actually down a little bit. I think he was hitting, 420 last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think him and Trout both were hitting 420. But so far, Buxton is hitting 408 with 8 home runs, 3 steals. His strikeout percentage is the lowest it's ever been at 21%. His walk rate is kind of the median it's ever been, sitting right at about 3.7, but with all the home runs, he doesn't really need to take walks. He should. But yeah, so he's got 2.3 WAR through the month of April, with a 261 WRC plus. Just throw that one out there since that's the stat of the day. That's absolutely nuts. So he's a 261 WRC plus. Mike Trout is so close with a 257. And he has, scroll down a little bit, a 413 average, 7 bombs, no stolen bases. So I think that's where Buxton gets him. Granted, that doesn't factor into WRC plus, right?
I don't believe so, no. Just hitting.
Yeah. See, but Trout's got 16 ribbies, 7 home runs in the 97 plate appearances. His walk rate is at 16.5. His K rate is actually up to almost 25. So it's one of the highest K rates he's ever had. But it appears to be paying off right now because what was it the other day that you had tweeted? He got the Barry Bonds treatment, homered in the first inning, and then was intentionally walked in the second inning.
That was Trout, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's who I'm talking about. Yeah. So Trout got the Barry Bonds treatment. If that gives you any indication on how good he's playing right now as well. And Ronald Acuna, I think, gets honorable mention as well, but doesn't quite crack the monthly Mike Trout level. All right. So those are our very, very official April awards. We will be submitting these to the MLB and expecting them to pay for the plaques. I'll let you know how that goes. I'm probably going to get the, who was it? Javi reaching over Moustakis. Was that Javi?
Yeah.
Yeah. For any of those that don't know, there was a bit of a dust up, and Javi Baez ended up flipping off Amir Garrett, I think.
Yep.
In the Reds game the other day, the Reds Cubs. All right, cool. So
yeah, that's gonna wrap things up for this episode. We both have been getting a little bit more active on Twitter, so you can follow the pod account at Getaway Day Pod, and then you can follow me at Gautam Rao 33. And then Mason at Mason_lot3.
Yeah, so basically, if you go to the pod Twitter, you could go into following, and I think the only people that we're following are the two of us and Major League Baseball. So it should be pretty easy to find us. Yeah. No, so thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I'll let you take us on out.
Yep. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with you next week.
All right. Have a good one.